welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. NCDC puts total number of confirmed COVID-19 patients in Nigeria at 190, following the confirmation of 6 more cases in Osun State, as 4 more patients are discharged in Lagos. Federal government raises concern over possible community transmission of COVID-19 in the country, says some of the recent positive cases cannot be traced to any confirmed case. Police in Delta State begin investigation into the killing of a man allegedly by a soldier enforcing COVID-19 lockdown in Warri, as military vows not to overlook the matter. And as the battle against COVID-19 continues, the British government opens new hospital in London with a capacity to treat about 4,000 patients, as the Health Secretary calls for more clinical trial volunteers. Plus, we'll have business, sports, news from Abuja, the FCT, and of course later on, international news from our London studios. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Do subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or you can download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android, Fire TV, and Roku as well. The Delta State Police Command is investigating the murder of a 28-year-old man allegedly shot dead by a soldier in Warri. The State Commissioner of Police, Hafiz Inwa, says the slain man was driving through a roadblock mounted by the army. He flouted the orders to stop his vehicle, which led to him being chased before he was eventually shot. Meanwhile, calm has since returned to the area, while security men have been drafted to maintain law and order. The Delta State government has also called for calm.
There was an incident in which somebody was stopped during the enforcement of this COVID-19 pandemic lockdown in Delta State. And that when he was stopped, he refused to stop at the checkpoint where security men are. He was, however, pursued, and eventually, when the security officers were getting close to him, the man just abandoned the vehicle and took to flight. So that was when a security officer picked the man, got him a shot with intent to deplete his vehicle, and eventually got the man. And the man unfortunately died. So, but the issue is that the impression given was what caused that, because the impression was that he was not a law-abiding, he could be one of these hoodlums terrorizing the town. That was the impression. So my take on this is that people should be law-abiding.
Meanwhile, the Nigerian Armed Forces is set to investigate the alleged shooting of the civilian in Delta State by a soldier involved in enforcement of the restriction of movement order in the state. The coordinator of the Director of Defense Media Operations, Major General John Enenche, says the outcome of the investigation into the incident will be made public when complete. General Enenche appeals to members of the public to disregard a trending video portraying members of the armed forces as brutal. Let's cross over to Abuja now. Here's Linda Akigbe. Linda.
Hello, Ijoma. A general hospital located in Potiskum, Yobe State was thrown into confusion when a 30-year-old truck driver presented himself with symptoms of cough, fever and difficulty in breathing, which he claims to have been experiencing for 6 days. The patient, who was returning from Lagos, could not continue his journey due to severe difficulties in breathing and had to stop over at Bauchi. The Commissioner of Health in the state, Dr. Lawan Ghana, says the patient has been isolated, his samples collected and sent to the NCDC in Abuja. The result is expected in 2 days' time. Meanwhile, the state government has converted the National Youth Service Corps camp in the state to service as a COVID-19 isolation center.
A 30-year-old truck driver presented to the General Outpatient Department of General Hospital Potiskum on the 2nd of April 2020 with symptoms of cough, fever, and difficulty in breathing of 6 days duration. The patient had traveled to Lagos 7 days earlier. He left Lagos on the 23rd of March 2020, but had to stop over at a primary healthcare center in Bauchi on account of the above symptoms when he couldn't continue his journey to Potiskum. The initial public health response, the state rapid response team arrived the hospital around 8:30 p.m. yesterday, just a few hours after he presented to the hospital to commence case investigation and institute clinical and public health actions. The patient was placed on isolation for detailed assessment.
COVID-19 has obviously changed the way we live, bringing untold hardship on people across the world. Apart from the elderly, some of the most vulnerable segments of the society are people living with disabilities and internally displaced persons. In this special report, our correspondent Kayla Megwa looks at the challenges of the most vulnerable in Nigeria in the wake of the spread of COVID-19.
There are over 2 billion people living with disabilities across the world. And the bulk of that number comes from developing countries like Nigeria. In 2013, Nigeria's National Assembly estimated that about 20 million of the nation's population are living with disabilities. And that number has grown exponentially with accidents, insurgency, and diseases like polio. According to the United Nations, 1 in every 10 Nigerians is living with disabilities. And out of 10 people living with disabilities, 9 live below the poverty line. You always kind of want someone there because you can get stuck. Irene is a polio survivor, working from home due to the lockdown following the spread of COVID-19 in Nigeria. She outlines some of the challenges the pandemic poses to people like her.
What about the isolation centers? If I need to get isolated, I need to be at an isolation center. What do the facilities look like? Are they wheelchair accessible? Not just for the entrance, but even things as basic as a toilet.
As of today, there's a plan to provide stimulus packages for people living with disabilities to alleviate their suffering during the pandemic. But unfortunately, they were not involved in the decision-making process. So how can the stimulus packages get to them?
We've written to them more than 4 letters. I've not gotten any reply. I'd expected by now that the minister would have held a stakeholders meeting. Even with this crisis, that's the kind of thing that should have happened.
The Kuchingoro camp in Abuja. Many of the families here, fleeing from Boko Haram, have been here since 2014. The women stay home to care for the children, as many of the men have gone out to look for food. They fear that we may have brought the coronavirus into the camp, and this woman, known as Mama Patience, refuses to use our microphone, even after sanitizing her hands.
If one person among come to die children, all they will be affected, and they will come to our houses again. We, the parents, will be affected. All of us, we are going to be swept out. Nobody will remain.
For many people who live in IDP camps like this one across the nation's capital and across the country, it's a double tragedy for them. They just ran away from the effects of Boko Haram, and now they're in the dangers of being killed by a disease that is sweeping across the globe. The call is for the government to do what they can to protect vulnerable members of society. That way they can still be alive in their country. Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
And let's get a bit of perspective on the palliatives designed to make life bearable for vulnerable groups. And joining me on the news at 10 is the Country Director, ActionAid, NOB. You're welcome to the news at 10.
Thank you very much.
So we just watched this report on the effect of COVID-19 on the vulnerable members of society. Have you observed any coordinated efforts by government to bring succor to these vulnerable people in the society?
I think this is where some of our worries are, because for ActionAid, the area that we focus, our target group is women and children. We have the youth. We have people living with disabilities. So I'm really happy about the preview. And when you're looking at the issue of decision making, people who are involved, we are worried about the kind of a stakeholder initiative, not opening up the doors because of participation in the processes of what the palliative will be. It's very, very important. And so our concern is how wide is the stakeholder, initiative? The civil society groups, are they involved? How wide is it? Because we are not only leaving the government to do the palliatives or to go out on public health education, we are in the communities. And we have done a lot with megaphones, translated messages into local languages, also enhancing that aspect. But I think there is need to open up the doors. We commend the Nigerian government for what they have done so far, what they are doing, but we need to open it up. And because we also need transparency and accountability. A lot of people, we have a lot of announcements about so much money being donated or what the government is trying to do. We need transparency and accountability because we need to know that the background is where more than 100 million Nigerians, according to the Nigerian government statistics, live below the poverty line. And so you are holding up about 100 million people. You don't want to drop them further. And so when you have a lockdown, it means a lot of people on the fringe. There are people who are above that go out every day for their daily activities.
Yes, what brings me to the question of how government has been able to identify these vulnerable people, this poorest of the poor. Is your organization, worried that how do you ensure that this aid is really getting to this indigent people and the poorest of the poor, so to speak?
I think one of the things that the Nigerian government did that I could commend them for is the National Social Investment Program, social protection for the people. That has been on ground. There is a lot of data of people who are living below the poverty line. But now that sector has been widened because it's not only those who are living below the poverty line, but those who are going to face poverty as a result of the lockdown. So it is widened. So are they going to increase? I think that's what the Nigerian government needs to come out with, because you don't just go on the street and distribute money. We need to monitor. And we also have to look at the network of the governors of different states that even pensioners are not getting money. Some of them have not been paid for more than 1 year or more than 2 years, 3 years. They have not received pensions. People are not receiving salaries. So we are bringing people down, and now they have to go under lockup. I think we have to have a wholesome, transparency attitude towards this whole effect, because we are all in here. I was in public health for about 10 years, and the public health structure is not something that can sustain the magnitude of what is coming to us, which means there is a lot of readiness. You have to get all Nigerians ready. You being on duty today is a sacrifice to the nation. All of us on the front line, we have to look at it as a sacrifice and as a call to duty. So both the Nigerian government, the officials, they need to open up and let people come. And we need to protect the frontline workers, especially our health workers. I remember my brother was in one of the hospitals, and about 4 Chinese people came in there for testing. It was pandemonium because people were running away. Even the health workers, they were not ready. Have we gotten people ready? We have to get to the local government. We have to go to the primary healthcare facilities. Have we gotten them ready? This is the time to do that.
All right. Thank you very, very much, Ms. NLB, for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Now, when the News at 10 returns, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries set to hold emergency meeting next week amid hope for a production cut deal with all its allies. That's in Business News. Join us again.